"Mom, you're becoming a burden." My son said it while checking his stock tickers, as if he were reading the weather. Michael sat behind a sleek glass desk in his corner office, city lights spread out behind him like a screensaver. On the small table near the window sat the casserole dish I had brought, still wrapped in foil. It looked out of place among the brushed metal and glass, like something from a different life. Behind him, a framed magazine cover called him the mind behind a $120 million tech empire. To the world, he was a visionary. To me, he was still the boy who once cried when I left him at kindergarten. I sat in a low leather chair that made me feel shorter than I was. I smoothed my skirt so he wouldn't see my hands shake. "A burden?" I repeated. "I didn't know you felt that way." He rubbed his forehead, eyes never leaving the screen. "Mom, that's not what I meant," he said. "It's just, things are complicated now. The company, the investors, the house. You, the house, the bills, it's a lot." I had come because he'd asked to talk about the future. I thought he wanted advice. I didn't realize he meant my future as a problem to solve. "I pay my own bills," I said quietly. "I'm not asking you for money, Michael." He sighed, impatient but trying not to sound it. "It's not just money," he said. "It's time. It's decisions. You live alone in a house that's too big. You call me every time something small breaks. You ask me to look over your statements. I'm juggling a company, a family. I can't carry you too. Carry me." As if the years I had carried him, from college to college, had slipped out of the ledger. I looked at the casserole, still warm under the foil. I had made it because he never had time to cook. Now I felt like I had brought the wrong thing to the wrong world. "What are you suggesting?" I asked. He hesitated. "Maybe it's time to sell the house," he said. "Move somewhere, managed. Or closer to us so we can take care of things in a structured way. I can't keep dropping everything when you need something. When you need something. Not when you need me." The words settled between us like a curtain. On his desk, numbers flashed and changed. On my side, nothing moved but my breath. "Thank you for being honest," I said at last. My voice sounded thin in that glossy room. "I didn't know being your mother had turned into a line item on your to-do list." He winced, just for a second. "Mom. It's all right," I said. "You've worked hard for this life. I don't want to be the thing that feels heavy when you look at it." I stood up slowly. My knees ached, but I didn't reach for the arm of the chair. I picked up the casserole dish, still warm against my palms. In the hallway outside his office, the carpet swallowed my footsteps. The glass doors closed behind me with a soft hiss. Back then, I thought those words, "You're becoming a burden," were the worst a child could say to a parent. I didn't know his shiny $120 million world was already cracking. I didn't know both of us were about to learn what burden really meant. If you've ever been made to feel like a burden by someone you love, stay with me, you need to hear what happened next. The weeks after that conversation felt like walking around with a stone in my pocket. I could still do my errands, still make my tea, still smile at the cashier. But the weight was always there, reminding me. At first, I told no one. I went back to my small apartment on the edge of town, the one with peeling paint on the stairwell and a stubborn draft near the window. I made a pot of soup, though there was no one to say it tasted just like when they were children. I sat at my little kitchen table and took out my checkbook. The numbers didn't care about hurt feelings. They just sat there, black on white. I ran my finger down the column of figures. Rent. Utilities. Groceries. The roof repair estimate folded beside me. My pension deposit stub. The small savings account my husband and I had built by saying no to vacations so we could say yes to braces and soccer cleats. For years, I had believed, quietly, that if things ever got truly bad, Michael would help. Not because he owed me, but because that's what family did. That belief had been like an invisible cushion under my chair. His words had pulled it away. I slept badly. I woke at 3 in the morning and stared at the ceiling, hearing his voice again. "You're becoming a burden, I can't carry you too." A few days later, I met my friend Helen for coffee after church. We sat in the fellowship hall, paper cups warming our hands, the air smelling faintly of stale cookies and floor cleaner. "You're quieter than usual," she said, studying my face. "And that's saying something." I hesitated. "Shame has a way of making your tongue heavy." "My son thinks I rely on him too much," I said at last. "He built one of those big tech companies. There was an article in the paper last year about it being worth $120 million. They put his picture in the business section. He wore a suit I didn't recognize." Helen nodded. "I remember," she said. "You brought the clipping to Bible study. You slipped it under my door like a proud teenager." I smiled, then felt my eyes sting. "Well," I said, "apparently his empire doesn't have room for one old woman with a leaky roof." Helen's eyebrows rose. "What did he say?" I repeated some of his words. "Not all of them. Some still felt too sharp to hold." She was quiet for a moment. "Lydia," she said gently, "do you remember when your husband lost his job at the factory that time? You took on 3 part-time cleaning jobs. You stretched every dollar until it squeaked. Did you ever call yourself a burden?" "No," I said slowly. "I called myself tired." "So maybe don't swallow that word so easily now," she replied. "It doesn't fit you." Her words were a small light in a dim hallway. On the way home, I passed the community center. A sign out front announced a financial literacy workshop for seniors. Know your worth, know your options. I almost walked past it. Then I stopped. Michael wanted me to figure it out. Maybe I should take him at his word. I pushed open the door. Inside, a woman about my age stood at a whiteboard, talking about budgets and scams and how not to sign things you didn't understand. There were handouts. There was coffee in a big metal urn. There were a dozen other faces, lined and attentive, just like mine. When she asked if anyone had questions, I raised my hand. "My son works in tech," I said. "He's done very well. For years, I let him handle my accounts because numbers scared me. But now I think I need to understand them myself." She smiled. Not the pitying smile you sometimes get as an older woman, but a proud one. "That's a good instinct," she said. "We'll start there." That afternoon, I gathered every bank statement, every insurance paper, every pension notice from my file drawer. I made an appointment with an advisor at the bank who had nothing to do with my son. Sitting across from her, I felt like a student in a class I should have taken decades earlier. "First," she said, "let's make sure everything is in your name that should be in your name. Then we'll see what you can afford, what you can't, and what you'd like." "What I'd like," I said, surprising myself, "is to know that whether my son's company doubles or disappears, I can still keep a roof over my head." She nodded. "That," she said, "is a goal we can work with." At home, I began making small changes. I canceled a cable package I barely used. I called the roofer and arranged a payment plan instead of waiting for a miracle. I put a little extra into my emergency fund each month, even if it meant buying store-brand soup. It didn't solve everything. But every time I checked my accounts and understood them, the stone in my pocket felt a little lighter. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. The first sign that Michael's world was cracking came not from him, but from the television. One evening, I was folding laundry with the local news murmuring in the background. A reporter's voice sharpened, the words "tech darling" and "regulatory investigation" pierced the haze. I looked up. There was my son's logo on the screen. There was his building, shot from the street, employees streaming out like ants from a disturbed hill. The anchor talked about misreported earnings and overstated valuations. The number $120 million flashed, then wobbled under the weight of doubt. My heart thudded. I reached for the phone, then stopped. He hadn't called me when his company soared. Would he want me calling now, while it fell? Over the next days, more headlines appeared. Lawsuits. Layoffs. The magazine cover that had praised him was replaced by online articles asking where it had all gone wrong. Sarah called one night, her voice tight. "Have you talked to Michael?" she asked. "No," I said. "I've seen the news. He's not answering much," she said. Laura's scared. Noah is confused. They might have to sell the house. I closed my eyes. The house with the wide staircase and the big kitchen island, the one he'd shown me like a trophy. "I'm sorry," I said. And I was. Whatever mistakes he'd made, he was still my boy. Days later, the phone rang while I was watering the plant on my windowsill. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and checked the screen. Michael. My stomach flipped. "Hello?" I said. For a moment, there was only breathing on the other end. "Mom," he said finally. His voice sounded smaller, as if the air had been let out of it. "Do you have a minute?" I looked around my little kitchen, clean but hardly impressive. There were no glass walls here, no stock tickers. Just a plant that was finally thriving and a calendar with my own appointments written on it, not just everyone else's. "Yes," I said. "I have a minute." "We lost the appeal," he said. "The investors pulled out. The companies, it's over." He swallowed. "We might have to move into something smaller. There are debts. Lawyers." I thought I was so smart. I thought I was untouchable. I heard a sound I hadn't heard from him since he was a boy who'd dropped his ice cream on the sidewalk. A small, broken sob. "Everyone's angry with me," he said. "Employees. Partners. Even Laura. They all counted on me. And I failed them." I sat down at the table. "Michael," I said softly, "I'm sorry you're going through this." "I told you were a burden," he blurted. "Do you remember? In my office that day?" The words hit me anew, even now. "Yes," I said. "I remember." "I was wrong," he said. "About everything. The company. The money. You." I thought having all that made me strong. But when it fell apart, do you know who I wanted to call? He didn't wait for me to answer. "You," he said. "Not my investors. Not my board. You." I let the silence sit for a moment. "Michael," I said, "I can't fix your legal problems. I can't pay your debts. I can't rebuild your empire." "I know," he said quickly. "I'm not asking you to. I need my mother. Not as a safety net. As a person who knew me before any of this." His words folded something in me back into place. At the time, I would later tell Helen, I didn't realize that this was the real beginning, not of his downfall, but of our healing. We met a week later at a small diner near my apartment.
Dinner was fine.
Nothing like the restaurants Michael used to take clients to. This place had cracked vinyl booths and a waitress who called everyone Han. Michael arrived in a plain jacket, not a tailored suit. He looked thinner. The confident tilt of his chin had been replaced by something softer, almost boyish. He slid into the booth across from me and wrapped his hands around the coffee cup as if it were the only warm thing left. "I sold the car," he said without preamble. "The big one. We needed the money. The house will probably go next. I see, I said. That must be hard. He shrugged, but his eyes were wet. It's strange, he said. I thought those things were who I was. The house, the cars, the title. Founder and CEO. People used to introduce me like that at parties. Now I'm the guy who tanked a $120 million company. He glanced up at me. And the woman I told was a burden is sitting in front of me with her life still intact. I smiled a little. My life wasn't an empire, I said. It was a small house, a lot of coupon clipping, and more casseroles than I can count. The difference is, I never thought I was above losing it all. We sat quietly while the waitress refilled our cups. I want to apologize, he said after she left. Not just with words. With understanding. When I called you a burden, what I meant was that I was drowning. But instead of saying that, I threw you an anchor. I took a breath. Those words hurt, I said. They made me question everything I had been to you. Every night I stayed up sewing costumes, every lunch I packed, every time I sat in a metal folding chair at a game you barely remember. I wondered if you saw any of it, or if it all disappeared behind your spreadsheets. He swallowed hard. I saw it, he said. I just put it in the past column, I guess. While I was chasing the future. I did something similar, I admitted. I put my own life in the later column while I chased after your needs. Your sister's. Your father's. I thought that was what good mothers did. It took you calling me a burden for me to ask if I was allowed to matter to myself, too. He frowned. Are you glad this happened? He asked quietly. The bankruptcy. The mess. The fall. I stirred a packet of sugar into my coffee, watching the crystals dissolve. No, I said. I'm not glad you're in pain. I'm not glad people lost jobs. But I am, strangely grateful that both of us had to face the truth. What truth? He asked. That our worth was never in the wrong columns, I said. You're not your net worth. I'm not my usefulness. We are more than what we produce or what we cost. He covered his face with his hands for a moment. When he lowered them, his eyes shone. Mom, he said, I don't know what my life is going to look like now. Maybe we'll rent for a while. Maybe I'll work for someone else. Maybe I'll build something again, smaller, slower. But, could you be part of it? Not as a financial plan. As you. I thought of my little apartment. My plant. My new habit of reading in the evenings without checking my phone every 10 minutes. My growing sense that I had a life beyond being someone's emergency contact. Yes, I said. I can be part of it. But I won't be the silent safety net you forget until you're falling. If I come for dinner, I'm coming as your mother, not your unpaid housekeeper. If you ask my advice, I'll give it. But I won't let my dignity depend on whether you take it. He nodded slowly. That sounds fair, he said. And if I ever call you a burden again? You won't, I interrupted gently. Because now you know what it feels like to be the one who thinks they're weighing everyone down. A wry smile tugged at his mouth. Touché, he said. In the months that followed, his life did fall apart in practical ways. The house was sold. The fancy memberships were cancelled. Friends who had loved the glow of his success stopped returning his calls. But some things held. Laura found a job of her own. Noah discovered that his dad could still play catch in a smaller backyard. Michael took a position at a mid-sized company, this time as a manager, not a king. We began a new rhythm. Sometimes he called me on his lunch break, just to tell me about a difficult client or a funny coworker. Sometimes I called him to share a small joy of my own, a new recipe, a book I liked, the plant that had sprouted yet another leaf. One Saturday, he and Noah came to my apartment with takeout. This place is cozy, Michael said, looking around. Not, less than. Just, enough. It's mine, I said. That's the important part. Noah flopped onto my couch, his long legs hanging off the end. Grandma, he said, Dad says you used to pack his lunch every day when he was a kid. I did, I said. He liked peanut butter and jelly with the crusts cut off. Can you teach me how to make it like you did? Noah asked. Dad says no one makes it the same. Michael laughed. He's right, he said. No one does. We stood in my little kitchen, 3 generations in a space that had never seen a tech valuation chart, and spread peanut butter on bread. My knife moved with the memory of countless mornings. As I watched my son and grandson at my counter, I realized something. The empire had fallen. The headlines had faded. But the real legacy had never been on a balance sheet. It was in the way Michael narrowed his eyes, trying not to let the jelly spill over the edge. It was in Noah's grin when he bit into the sandwich and said, "Yep. This is it." One evening, much later, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea. The last light of day turned the steam to gold. My phone lay beside me, face up. Not waiting. Just there. It buzzed. A text from Michael, heading home. Just wanted to say I'm grateful for you. Not for what you do. For who you are. I smiled and sipped my tea. My son once called me a burden, from the top of a $120 million tech empire he thought would never crumble. His life did fall apart. Mine, in its quiet way, finally came together. Sometimes, when you're older, love looks like stepping back when your children think they can fly without you. Sometimes it looks like answering the phone when they fall, not to catch them completely, but to remind them they still have a name, a history, and a home in your heart. What changed my life wasn't the rise or fall of my son's fortune. It was learning that my worth was never measured in dollars, dishes, or dependence. If this story touched your heart, you can like this video, leave a comment, or share it with someone who might need to hear it. If you've ever felt treated like a burden, my next story may speak to you even more. And if you'd like more stories like this, you're always welcome to subscribe to this channel, Lydia's True Stories.